Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the best Assassin's Creed in years, but you're still not an assassin. Hello and welcome to Pretty Good Gaming. My name is Henry Cooper and I was fortunate enough to be given an early access code by Ubisoft. Thank you very much for that. So I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla for the past week and I'm about 30 to 40 hours in and I still haven't finished it. So this isn't a full review, this is not a review, this is my impressions of the game. So I've asked you what your questions are on Discord. There's a link for that down in the description if you want to go join in. I'm going to try to answer them as best I can, but I might miss out a few things here and there. But the more thorough review will come when I have finished the game. Hopefully that'll be at the end of the week, but we'll wait and see. I'm not going to review it till I've actually finished it because I have this little thing called integrity. You may not have noticed. So the first question is from Angry Hobbit 0 and he's got many questions, so let's get on with it. Is there a story to sink into? Yes, so the story of this one is you are Eivor, a male or female Viking, it's up to you, you can make a choice, who has set out with his brother slash best friend. You're not really brothers, it's more like a bond rather than blood. You set out to go to England to forge your own path, your own way, and settle there and do your own thing away from Norway and kind of just make something of yourself on your own. You've already had some past glories, you're very, weathered warriors, you're seasoned warriors, and now you're starting this new path, this new chapter in your lives, and there's a bit of conflict that happens with different people because you want to settle, you want to keep your community safe, but Sigurd is much more ambitious and wants to do more things. There's actual characters this time around, unlike in Odyssey, people who will linger throughout the whole story and will be there and are likable or unlikable. There's a character who is an actual assassin in an Assassin's Creed game who is in the main cast. He's called Basim and he's quite cool, like he's got a lot of mystery about him, but he's also pretty shifty and definitely not to be trusted. There's also Randvi, who is Sigurd's kind of wife, but there's a lot of friction there, there's a lot of strain on their relationship, so that's a bit of conflict between them. So there's a lot more actual storytelling going on here in this one, much more than there was in Odyssey, because I did play Odyssey, but in the end I just fell off because it was boring and repetitive and grindy, and I don't think any of those apply to this one. I think this is just a better version of the path that Odyssey started. It's still very much a warrior based thing, it's not an Assassin's Creed based thing or stealth, but it's just a better version of that. You can do stealth this time, but it's nowhere near as much as the focus as it used to be way back in the day with Ezio. Next up, have they improved the mechanics on movement, and more so the damned horse movement? I mean, the horse is fine. He's probably about as good as he was. It's not as annoying as in Red Dead when he just T-bones into a tree. That doesn't happen. And you can call him at will and he seems to show up most of the time. So that's fine. There's nothing to really write home about. In terms of movement, you can climb pretty much anything, and just like in Odyssey, it's got more free climbing approach like you do in Breath of the Wild, where you can kind of climb any rock face. Most of the time that's pretty good. Sometimes it's a bit janky, but Assassin's Creed has kind of always been like that. Although speaking of jank, the way I've kind of been rationalizing the game in my head, it borrows from loads of popular open world games, which is the right thing to do. Take what works. So the way I describe it is it takes The Witcher's focus on choice and having no right answers, and similar to something like Mass Effect as well. I'm not entirely sure how much these choices have wider impacts. They seem to be quite small at the moment, but again, I'm not finished yet, so maybe there's going to be some huge repercussions down the line. It's got Red Dead's level of kind of detail and immersion in this Viking world, just like Red Dead is a cowboy kind of world. It really makes you feel like a Viking. Then it's also got this kind of sense of wonder of something like Horizon, where every time you enter a new area, it's very fantastical, and the lighting comes over the hill, and it looks pretty. It's very well presented in that very wondrous way. But then it's also got this incredible sense of discovery and exploration, like in a Bethesda game like Skyrim, but along with being a Bethesda-inspired game, it's got a lot of jank. And speaking of being an immersive Viking game, that leads into the next question, again from Angry Hobbit. Is it a good Viking game? Like Black Flag was a great pirate game and a great story. Yes, I think it's a good Viking game. You can do Viking stuff. You can go on raids in your longboat and you just pull up, you march through the monastery, you brutalize everyone in sight with some horrific finisher animations. There's some really nasty ones. And you loot it, you take it back, you build your settlement using these resources that you can only get doing these raids in monasteries. You build the settlement, you get different facilities which give you different bonuses, like there's a blacksmith who can upgrade your armor, because again, this is an RPG this time. You can upgrade armor in menus, and then you can take it to him, and you can increase the amount you can upgrade it further by, like, it just boosts it, improves it altogether. It also changes its appearance quite a lot. There's other buildings you can get, like a grain store or a cattle farm, which boosts your feast buff, because you're a Viking. The three things they love is fighting, fucking, and feasting. So you can do all that. That'll give you a little health buff for a while. Or you can set up a tattoo shop and get tattoos for your head, arms. Either arms can be both the same, they're both different. You can get it on your front, you can get it on your back, you can change your haircut, all that sort of stuff. That's great. It's a good Viking game, I think. It's not a good Assassin's game, though. It's a good Viking game. Then these next three I've put together because they're all kind of on the same thing, and that's monetization. Are there any stupid paywalls or monetization that impedes gameplay? Then from Frozen Monkey, is the game unnecessarily grindy and Ubisoft can sell your microtransactions to get around it, like Ubisoft games? And then from Tons, also the grind and the microtransactions, how aggressive is the store to sell you microtransactions? All the microtransactions I've completely ignored. As soon as you boot up the game, there's a window for the store, which you can click, and it says, liven up your gameplay, because playing as a Viking wasn't lively enough. For every customizable item in the game, there is a microtransaction for it. You can buy weapons, you can buy armor, but I'm not entirely certain if they have stat bonuses because you can't tell before you buy it, but they do have perks. So when you put all of the same armor sets on, you get a little perk. So all of the stuff from the Raven armor, you'll get a little extra thing. That is with these downloadable ones for microtransactions, and I also can't tell you how much they are because the payment store to get the premium currency, which is called like Helix credits or something, that's not live yet. I did get about 300 Helix credits for just playing, like randomly. I don't really know what I did to acquire them, but that happened. So if there's a customizable item in the game, there is a microtransaction for it. From your armor, weapons, tattoos, your boat, your horse, your raven. It's not as bad as it could be, but it's still shit. Okay, next up from Metal Shark. Can you use fear and intimidation, or does every opponent want to fight you no matter how meek they are in comparison? Yeah, pretty much everyone wants your guts, but you're probably going to be tougher than them, so you can kick the shit out of them and do some brutal killer animations. So there'll be neutral areas where you can walk through pretty okay, totally fine. If you do something wrong, guards might come for you. Then there are kind of incognito areas, I think they're called distrust areas, where you'll pop your hood up, and that's where actual stealth plays in. This is an Assassin's Creed game where stealth is back. It's nowhere near as what it was before, but it's much more than it was in Odyssey. And you can assassinate people in one hit now, which is great. And even the tougher guys, you can assassinate in one hit, because you can get an ability which gives you this ring, and you like click it in the ring, and you can one-shot them. It's fucking yes. I'm so glad that's back. Yeah, there's no sort of no kind of intimidation thing. Everyone gives it a go if they're in a fight. And then another one: do you still run into walls and stop abruptly? Yeah, every now and then. Sometimes you try and climb a wall, and he just doesn't do it. That's part of that jank I said about before. And then, did the audio get repetitious and boring enough to tune it out / want to play your own music or mute it? So the music in it, it sounds like Viking stuff. It's lots of drums, it's lots of kind of like war chants. And then when you're on your boat, it's not like it was in Black Flag or Odyssey where you're properly sailing the high seas or anything. You're just navigating the different waterways of England. But you can still play shanties, which are quite fun, or you can switch it and hear stories where they tell you of their great victories and stuff. Although normally your victories are going to be way better than anything these idiots have ever done. Okay, then there's another one from Angry Hobbit Zero. Is the leveling similar to the previous two games, or has stealth kills gone back to how they should be? So yeah, as I said, stealth kills, you can assassinate people in one hit, and you can get an upgrade to do the bigger guys in one hit. So there's a huge skill tree. It kind of looks bigger than it is. Most of them are stat buffs, so it'll be like plus percentage to your light attack, or plus resistance to heavy attacks, or plus to health, or something like that. But then there's the more important ones, the bigger nodes. They give you actual abilities, like being able to assassinate the bigger targets, or being able to chain assassinations together. So you do a bit of stabby stab, and then you just yeet an axe at someone. Or there's the stomp ability, where when a guy goes down, you stomp on their face, and that's really important. Get that one as soon as you can. So you get these skill points in pairs every time you level up, and then that correlates to an overall power level. It's suggested that you be a certain power level before going to certain areas and facing certain foes, but never once did I ever feel like I was underpowered. I always felt like I was on the line or way overpowered. And that's just from playing the story. I never felt like I needed to grind through it. I feel like this is nowhere near as grindy as it was in Odyssey, which was one of its biggest problems. And then the next question is from Summinder. Are the game mechanics / gameplay same as Origins and Odyssey? Are there too many repetitive filler quests scattered around the huge map? I gave up halfway through both games, just got tired. Yeah, me too, man. That's exactly what happened with Odyssey. So the major difference in this one is that you have this settlement and you build it up. That's kind of the main thing as part of your Viking fantasies, Viking sim, and going on raids and doing this and that. But the core of it, it's still in the same vein of it being like the Warrior's Creed, like Odyssey and Origins. You've got light attack and heavy attack on your shoulder buttons. You've got a parry, you've got a dodge, you've got ranged attacks with a bow and arrow. So it's still very much in that, but it is its own spin on it, and it does grow it. And in my opinion, it massively builds upon it. It's way better than Odyssey. In terms of quests, it's not really broken up into main and side quests. There are just like quests, many of which are the story-based ones. They are, pushing you through the adventure with you and Sigurd, and kind of building up your home and your status in England. So a lot of them involve going off to different parts of England, like East Anglia or Mercia, and establishing allies there by doing different things for them. Normally it's like topple a king and put a new one in place, or help this person like reclaim their city or whatever, and there'll be different things. Then they pledge their allegiance to you, and then your community gets bigger, and you can then go off and do other things. But then there are some which are called world events, and they're sort of side quests, but they're more like random stranger events, like in Red Dead, where there's just some weirdo who's got a thing going on, and it's the short, self-contained nugget of a quest. Chances are they're really odd. So there was one where there was a woman who had lost her comb, and she wanted me to go find it, and if I found it, she would have sex with me. I did not find it, and I was very disappointed. And then there was another one where there was a nudist who got kicked out of a nudist camp for being too nude, so there's that. There was a crazy cat lady at one point, so they're all kind of weird and wonderful. But then there's some really huge kind of side quests, if you call them that. This is why I wouldn't really say main and side quest, where there's this hallucination kind of dream vision thing. We just go to Asgard. You can just, it's this huge fantastical thing. It's a multi-objective thing, a multi-level quest in a brand new map with brand new characters, including, gods like Thor and Tyr, and you fight Jotnar, you fight frost giants. It's this huge separate thing, which is all about Eivor's kind of spiritual journey rather than his conquest of England. It's a really interesting extra bit, which I don't feel like is compulsory at all, really. You could just not do it, but it's cool that it's there. Okay, next up is from Two Shot Tino. Would this be a good entry point for someone who's never played an AC game? So in Assassin's Creed, all of these historical settings, they're not real. You're actually sort of in the Matrix type thing. You're a person in their version of the real world, and you go in and you then live through this person's life because they are an ancestor or something, and you are doing their memories, essentially. And there's this hidden war between the group called the Assassins, the group called the Templars. The Assassins want freedom, the Templars want control. That's the base version of that kind of conflict. Throughout the years, though, that real world stuff has been pushed back, and it's much more focused on these different historical time periods. And that depends on who you are, whether or not you like that. A lot of people really like that real world stuff and will be disappointed because it's very, very light. I've been to the real world once in my 40-hour playthrough, but if you don't like any of that stuff, it's great because it's all just pushed aside. Now it's just a fun little Viking romp through, Middle Ages England. It's great. As a starting point, though, I mean, you don't really need to know any of the background stuff. It depends how interested you are in it. So watch a couple of YouTube videos and see if there's kind of high sci-fi stuff with old gods and communication across time sounds interesting, because it's a bit complicated and like convoluted, but it's kind of cool. But it's very light in this one. It's very, very light. Next up from Lord Crisp, does combat feel powerful or is everything spongy? I feel like the combat is, most of the time it's really good. Sometimes it can feel a little bit loose and weightless, but most of the time it's very chunky. It's quite animation led, so there is a bit of a delay in the wind up of hitting the guy, but it feels like you're doing damage. It doesn't feel like chipping away. Naturally, as I've complained about before, I immediately turn damage numbers off, and that just makes my life so much better. And the different weapons you can get really help spice things up. So you can get axes, big and small, swords, great and small, spears, shields, flails, and you can dual wield. So you can have an axe and a shield, or an axe and an axe, or a shield and a shield. And there's an ability you can unlock in the skill tree, so you can use 2 heavy weapons at once, like 2 big axes, or a shield and a spear, which is great. So that adds a bit of versatility. All of them can be upgraded independently. Weapons aren't just spunked over you like they are in Odyssey. Every weapon you get is unique and you keep forever, so you can, pick your favorites and work with them and improve them and change their appearance and stuff. All that's great. It's a huge improvement on Odyssey, but at times it does feel kind of too loose, like you're slipping about, and it doesn't always connect quite right sometimes. And as I said, some of the finisher animations are brutal. My favorite one is you take the guy's big axe, he throws his hands up to try and block it, you chop through his hands and you plant the axe right in his shoulder, and it's just nasty. It's nasty. And next up is from Master Assassin. I would like to know if it is the same format. It certainly seems as though it is, as Origins and Odyssey, or have they brought back the dual storyline? So in terms of dual storyline, in the sense of Odyssey, you only have one protagonist this time. Whether it's male or female doesn't matter, it's the same person. But in terms of the past stuff and the present day stuff, the present day stuff is, thrown in the bin, basically. It's there, but it's really not. Like, as I said, I've been there once, so that's not really relevant at all. It's way more in the same vein as Origins and Odyssey. It's not as much of like a reinvention of the franchise as Odyssey was. It's just a perfection of that. It's got much, much better, and it improves on so much of that groundwork that was laid, and it strips away most of the stuff I didn't like about Odyssey. The story is much better. There's nowhere near as much of a grind. You'll feel like your weapons are actually important. The damage you do actually feels like something instead of chipping away. It's a better version of those games, at least in my opinion. Next one's from Benson Sackers. Can you remove the fur from outfits? So the fur is on your cloak, but if you don't like that, you can just hide it. You can keep all of the stats, but you can make it disappear. If you don't like the look of a certain item piece, you can get rid of it, basically, without losing any of the gameplay benefits. So if you don't like fur, you don't have to have the fur. Next question is from Earthworm Ben, and this is a really interesting one. Comparison to Ghost of Tsushima, what does Valhalla do better? So Ghost of Tsushima and Valhalla are quite different games in their kind of fundamentals. So Ghost of Tsushima is a traditional open world, and that's more like old school Assassin's Creed. If you want old school Assassin's Creed, play that game. It's brilliant. It's my second on the Game of the Year list. This is an RPG first and foremost, with a huge open world, loads of choice-based stuff, which again, I'm not entirely sure how much that's going to play into the wider narrative, but little ways it pays off. Little things like getting someone on my team who otherwise wouldn't be if I didn't make those choices. In both games, there are stats and different armor pieces that do different things, but in this, that's much more the case because you can upgrade things multiple times. You can take them to be improved and then upgrade them further and then improved again. That kind of cycle. Growing your settlement is like a much better version of what was done in Red Dead 2. Like Red Dead 2, the settlement was cool, but you didn't have to do anything there. Like, it didn't really reward you with much. Whereas this is actually tangible. One of the good things about Red Dead 2 in that way was that the people speak to you. So do these people in the settlement. They feel like they like you and you know who they are. You can even romance some of them, and sometimes that influences the story and sometimes it doesn't. And you can completely choose not to indulge in it, or you can be naughty and save scum it like I did. In terms of what it does better though, it's a bigger game in every way. It's blown up. That you may not like that. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is bigger. You're living Jin's story. In this one, you're influencing Eivor's story. You're part of it. Okay, then I've got one final question here from Cloney. How is the boating in the game? Is it better or worse than Black Flag? Is it Viking enough? So the boating in it, it's mainly means of travel. You can't fight on the boat. You're just traveling through different waterways of England, and then from the boat you can launch raids, which are great fun. But there's no naval battles. You're not sailing the high seas. It's different to Black Flag. It's very, very different. The boat's not so much of a character as it was in Black Flag, where you have to use the boat. It's an essential gameplay item in that game. It's not in this one. It's just an extra thing. And you can fast travel to most places. There's viewpoints everywhere, or you can ride your horse and also navigate. Also navigation, oh my god, every game get auto navigation. It's so good. You can set a marker and just tell your horse or your boat to go to it. Obviously your boat will have to stick to the waterways, but it will just lead you there. Tell your crew to sing a shanty, put on the cinematic camera, and just roll with it. It's great. The world looks gorgeous, and it's just great to enjoy like that. So that's the end of my questions for this impressions video, but I do have a number of problems with it. Mainly it's like performance based stuff. The frame rate is very, very choppy at some points. The textures kind of pop in and out. I saw a horse that looked like a Cybertruck. I've had 2 crashes. There were a couple of quite long load times, especially at the beginning. The first load screen is very long. I've encountered a number of bugs, like smash a door to open it. It doesn't always work. Audio drops like in the dialogue, so you'll be speaking and then half of it just stops. It just ends, and then the conversation would carry on as normal, as if the other person has heard what you say, and then your audio comes back in, so that's overlaid.
My husband should be home today.
Good to hear.
The last we heard, he was approaching
Sigurd
Stavanger.
will not save you from his father's wrath, Eivor.
But I do think that one has largely been fixed. It hasn't happened for ages since the game updated while I was playing it this week, so I think that one's been okay. The game is arguably too long. There's a lot to get through. This isn't a weekend game. This is going to take up a lot of your time. Even if you just mainline the main quests, it's still going to be a lot of work. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people are really liking that. I like how much content there is. There's a much greater sense of exploration than there was before. It's not as Ubisofty as you might think. It's not just a map full of crap. There are these little lights that represent different things. So there's wealth, which is gold, which can mean a number of different things. There are mysteries, which are blue, which represent a number of different things. There are artifacts, which are, again, there are a number of different things, and they're in white. That gives you a sense of discovery when you go there. It's like, oh, I know there's something interesting over there. I'm going to go and find out what it is myself, not have the game tell me what to do. And I think that's absolutely one of this game's biggest strong suits. But that's the end of this video. This is my second take, and hopefully it's been a lot quicker than the last one. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button and yada, yada, yada. You know all that. You know what to do. Go on over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming to support the content we create. Hopefully I'll have my full proper review out by the end of the week. I've been Henry Cooper. This has been Pretty Good Gaming. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.